Kohala Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rekahak Radash. Double honors to the elder apostles, bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well for teaching this word in truth and sincerity. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect scattered abroad. To USA Shalom. And this is going into what's going on with Nero 47 and how he think he's just gonna run amok and hijack these different nations for their resources, and think that they're not talking about, bucking up against that. This is AI overviews that I've I took screenshots of them, asking certain questions about what's to come, like as far as like how these nations are gonna question and possibly retaliate, in Nero's quest, pretty much rule the whole Western Hemisphere, and and then also there was different comments made after he ran up in Venezuela and took Maduro captive. So like you had a few leaders from the Hamite nation from Africa, Captain Ibrahim Traore. He pretty much said this: the African leader who reportedly said that they needed to start developing nuclear weapons is Captain Ibrahim Traore, the interim president of Burkina Faso, during a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in July 2023. In subsequent statements, Traore expressed a strong need for energy for his country's development and regional needs, leading to a focus on nuclear power. News reports and social media snippets quote him as saying, "In this world, we have realized that you need to own nuclear bombs to be respected. We will soon own them for our self-defense." It is important to note the context. The focus, the focus is on energy. Burkina Faso has since signed agreements with the Russian state atomic energy company, Rosatom, to build a nuclear power plant for civilian electricity generation, which is a key goal for the energy deficient nation. Defense and sovereignty. Traore's comments about nuclear weapons are often tied to the theme of African sovereignty, self-defense against imperialists, and the perceived need for military strength to gain international respect, drawing parallels with other nations that use nuclear deterrence. Peace treaty. The African continent is generally a nuclear-free zone under the Treaty of Palindaba, which forbids the research, development, and stationing of nuclear explosive devices. South Africa is the only African nation that has ever developed nuclear South Africa is the only African nation that has ever developed nuclear weapons and then voluntarily dismantled its entire arsenal before joining the treaty. So basically, they tired of these nations running up in there, disrespecting, taking claim to their resources, taking claim to their land and things of that nature. And he want to build up a defense against it. It's like, it's almost like he foresaw what was about to happen with this thing right here. Because, Nero and them tiny tops, man, they ain't going to stop at nothing. Western Edomites and Amalek, they're not going to stop at, they pretty much want to take over everything, and they're going to do it by force and claim that, they're coming in as a peaceful Christian nation, which is, Western Edomites will always claim that bullshit. Tiny tops will, what I'm saying, they looking at it as you need to pay us homage. Like they both insane. So I could see why, them Hamites want to get, what I'm saying, they want to defend themselves. Who blames them? And this is another AI overview, and this is from Patrick Lawumba, and this is something that he said recently, pretty much over the weekend when Trump ran up in Venezuela and pretty much kidnapped Maduro. The African leader who reportedly stated that African countries should develop nuclear weapons in response to the U.S. actions against Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela is a public intellectual and former anti-corruption official. Professor Patrick Lawumba, his initials PLO, Lawumba, from Kenya. The context for his remarks came after a recent future date and snippets, but context points to a specific event that has recently occurred, U.S. operation that led to the capture and extraction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. During an interview, Lawumba used the event to argue that the United States only targets vulnerable nations and that the possession of nuclear weapons, like by North Korea, serves as a deterrent against foreign intervention. Lawumba's argument was the U.S. intervenes in countries that lack strong defense mechanisms. North Korea developed nuclear weapons, which is why the U.S. cannot just wake up one day and go and bomb North Korea. Therefore, African nations should also pursue nuclear weapon capabilities to ensure their sovereignty and prevent similar actions by powerful nations. While the South African government officially condemned the U.S. operation as a violation of the UN Charter and called for an urgent UN Security Council meeting, the call for African nations to develop nuclear weapons came specifically from Lawumba. January 2026, following the United States capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, Clayson Manyila, South Africa's head of public diplomacy, suggested that African nations should develop nuclear weapons to protect themselves from foreign intervention. Key details of the statement. The incident on January 3rd, 2026, U.S. forces captured Maduro in a military operation called Operation Absolute Resolve. The comment in response to a social media post suggesting South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa should restart the country's nuclear program to protect us from the USA bully Manila 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 Manala Manala replied, "I found no fault in your proposal." So basically, those Hamite nations, the Hamite countries over there in the land of Ham, they, in Africa, they want to pretty much start their own nuclear program, man. You know what I'm saying? They want to prevent that. They want to prevent that from happening to them, and they're going to use the BRICS nations in order to do that. So they are aligning themselves with other powerful nations, Russia and North Korea, to start developing their own weapons, man. So this is where all the other nations are starting to hate this horde, man. They're starting to hate this horde that ride upon this beast, man. And can you actually blame them? No. Prophecies is starting to play themselves out, rapidly. It's picking up pace. The rationale, Moyila argued that the U.S. only attacks vulnerable countries and pointed to North Korea's nuclear arsenal as the reason why the U.S. does not bomb them. Retraction, Manila later deleted the post, stating it was poorly framed and it didn't reflect the official position of the South African government, which remains committed to a nuclear-free world. They basically, they probably got on them for saying that, but it's out there, man. You can't retract how you really feel. You can retract what you say because it wasn't quote unquote politically correct, but you can't retract how you feel, man. And these other nations, especially these smaller nations, they don't have they don't have a big military outfit. They're not positioned all over the world. They're not positioned in certain places. They just protect their homeland. So these smaller nations, man, they getting shaky, man. They getting squirrely, man. They want to protect themselves. Who can blame them? Related reactions from African leaders. Ugandan President Yoriri Museveni Yoriri Museveni stated on January 4th, 2026, that while the U.S. has air and sea advantages, his forces could not defeat them on land. If they attempt a similar ground intervention in Uganda, the African Union expressed grave concern following the U.S. military strike, warning that the unilateral force undermines international stability and the principle of equality among nations. So this is brewing. Like, the world is a stage, and it's brewing where everybody's gonna start to come against that great whore Babylon, man. And And they're going to start looking at them tiny tops too as being, right in the middle of all that. So let's go into a scripture or two. Let's go into a scripture or two. We'll go to Proverbs 26, Salakia, Proverbs 26 and 24. And I'm going to read to 26. He that hateth dissembleth with his words, Salakia, with his lips, and layeth up deceit within. Yeah, man. He gonna talk smooth to you, but then all of a sudden, man, he's gonna deceive you. And that's exactly what these animals do, man. That's exactly how Esau, Edom, that's how they get down. That's how they move. They'll talk to you sweet. They'll get aggressive, but they'll try to talk to you sweet, promise you this, promise you that. But then on the back end, it's all deceit in his heart, all deceit in his mind. And he's looking for a way, to take what you got. You know what I'm saying? They'll act peacefully, but then, then they're gonna come and take it. They'll just come and take whatever you got, and they'll do it with violence. You know what I'm saying? Like undaunting violence. Like they'll just, they'll come at you and wipe everything out, wipe everything that you have out, man. And you along with it, just to get what you have. There's verse 25. When he speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Yeah, man. So you can't believe anything that these people tell you, man. You can't believe nothing that these politicians tell you. You can't believe nothing that, anything that comes down the pipeline from these wicked elites. You know what I mean? They whole goal is to deceive you and basically rape, rob, and murder you. And pretty much pillage your land, take what you got, take all your natural resources, and then, make a movie about it, and put one of themselves, in all the roles. Just like, just like they did to our people, man. You got them tiny tops sitting over there in the land right now. They straight up imposters, man. They, they steal heritage. They'll steal your identity. You know what I'm saying? This is verse 26. Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. And the whole congregation is the world stage. And they're seeing how treacherous and ruthless these people are. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like, it almost seems like the people have forgotten how treacherous these people are. Even his own kind know that, they're starting to see how treacherous and untruthful and how deceitful and just grimy these people are. You know what I mean? And these are the people that you stand up and vote for. These are the people that you put your faith in, and they turn around, and show you how wicked they can really be. As of January 5th, 2026, NATO as a collective organization has not issued a formal endorsement or condemnation regarding President Nero's, Nero 47. They haven't made any endorsement or condemnation regarding his January 3rd, 2026 military operation to capture Nicolas Maduro. The alliance is currently treading a fine line to avoid direct confrontation with the United States while managing internal anxiety among European member states. The following details reflect the current stance and internal dynamics within the alliance. NATO diplomatic response. Avoidance of official stance. NATO has largely refrained from official statements on the Venezuelan raid, focusing instead on the broader security concerns. Senior diplomats have indicated that the alliance is trying to avoid antagonizing President Nero T, particularly following his recent comments about potentially taking over Greenland, a territory of NATO ally Denmark. Internal anxiety. While some NATO diplomats have expressed full support for Denmark's concerns regarding U.S. intentions towards Greenland, they have not explicitly linked this to a condemnation of the Venezuelan operation. European caution. European Union members within NATO have reacted cautiously, calling for respect for international law, while stopping short of directly condemning the U.S. actions. See, basically, you know what I'm saying, they don't want to ruffle no feathers. You know what I'm saying? They trying to be peacekeeper, or whatever. You know, but all that shit, you're gonna have to pick a side. You know what I'm saying? The Lord said, man, let your yay be yay, let your nay be nay. So if you stand, if you against it, say it. If you not, say it. Don't play that middle ground, because all that shit gonna do is come back to bite you in your ass. Context of the action. The raid on January 3rd, 2026, U.S. Special Forces captured Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, in Caracas. Maduro was subsequently flown to New York to face federal narco terrorism and drug trafficking charges. See, this is the guys. This is the bullshit, you know. This is that smile on your face and then stab you in the back shit, you know. Like, this is the game that he's playing, and this, you know what I'm saying, to make it legitimize, like to legitimize your reasoning for going in there. But all the while, all you really wanted was the oil, and possibly to get at their Bitcoin stash, because they have a large Bitcoin stash, you know. So do um uh there's another South American country that has a large Bitcoin stash. I might remember it during you know what I'm saying, during this video. But like, damn, I can't remember it at the moment, because they were the first ones to actually have a Bitcoin reserve, you know. They actually it wasn't, what is it? It begins with an E. I'm trying to remember that name. I don't think it was Ecuador. But they pretty much banked on, they put their whole country on the line with Bitcoin. You know, they made it the national you know, currency. It made it their nation's currency. You know what I'm saying, their national currency. So Venezuela supposedly has a large Bitcoin, you know, state. You know, they got a gang of them. They got a bunch of them. You know, and them things are all, you know what I'm saying. At one point, they was up over 100,000 a coin. You know, projected, you know what I'm saying, to hit 1 million a coin. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying, for all that bullshit, in order for that bullshit to, you know, hold any weight, it has to be worth its weight in gold and then some. So they trying to make that a standard, you know. But it's all fictional money, man. You know, digital currencies is just fictional money, man. It's like owning a comic book, man. the only time it's worth anything is because the person who wanna, you know what I'm saying, who wanna invest in it, you know, and things of that nature, people who believe in it. So it's not really substantial. It's not substantial. It doesn't have no stability. But nevertheless, Venezuela has a few resources that, you know, they pretty much want to get their hands on. So they use the guise of we catching up for drug trafficking and all this other nonsense. Like, dude, the biggest supply of drugs come out of Colombia, and everybody knows that shit. You know, so that shit is just like it's like you playing games, and the American people are so fucking stupid. You know, they actually bought that shit. You know, until they really saw what he was after, and he said it right after he did it. Like, we after the gold. I mean, we after their oil. So, you know, they went in there all on the guise of just getting your oil. So they had to find a reason to do it. So, well, let's get them on drug charges. That's pretty much what they do with the tribes. You know what I'm saying? Well, just bring them up on drug charges. You know. But like Ecclesiastes 12:10 says, man, never trust thy enemies, man. So